Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 453 and my guest is Dr. Blaine Leeds. Blaine's been practicing general and cosmetic dentistry for over 28 years. He's on a mission to improve the quality and quantity of sleep for children, teens, and adults. Oral sleep apnea impedes restorative sleep, which experts are now determining to be the root cause of so many mental, emotional, and physical issues. Teeth are super important, y'all. He's also the co-author of What Happens When Your Child Doesn't Sleep, exploring the link between children's general health and sleep-obstructed breathing related to underdeveloped jaws. I find that really interesting. I was born with lots of extra teeth. I had to get teeth pulled as a kid and had braces for a couple years. And then, of course, teeth have memory. So as an adult, I ended up getting Invisalign and taking care of that business. But my dentist as an adult was really interesting. Dr. Cummings in Nashville, Tennessee, actually. Shout out Dr. Cummings. And he said that in my generation that kids oftentimes had lots of teeth removed for braces and things. Now I have a genetic disorder that is coupled with having extra teeth. So I may be an anomaly in that, but I know a lot of people have had wisdom teeth pulled and various things to prepare for braces. And he had said to me that it actually, now they know better because it changes the shape of the jaw by doing that. And that's a no-no because it's very important for your jaw to have a particular shape. And anyway, I just thought that was all interesting. And then Dr. Leeds echoes that sentiment, obviously. And that's what we talk about. So anyway, long story longer, I had braces. My brother had braces. I come from a family of braces people. And I really loved Invisalign, but that's a whole other story, and it's not an ad for Invisalign. Just wanted to throw it out there. Anyway, check out Hey Human Podcast for links and to learn more about my guests and the show. Check out SusanRuth.com to learn more about me and my other artistic endeavors, including some upcoming film festivals. I'm very excited. Indie Film Fest is coming up April 24th through the 27th in Indiana. And you can get tickets for that. And again, that's Indie Film Fest. And I've got some more coming up that I will announce. Let's see, in May is the Der Fantastique in Kassel, Germany. So if you live in Germany, go see the film there. And I feel like there's a couple others. I know there's a couple I can't announce yet, but it's exciting. Good things are coming. Yeah, so definitely check that out on SusanRuth.com. And social media. Sorry, I lost my train. I'm just a rambling gal tonight. You can find Susan Ruthism on social media and find my music on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, or wherever you do those sorts of things. Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you for listening. Be well. Hang in there. It's a tough time. Be kind. Be love. And here we go. Dr. Blaine Leeds, welcome to Hey Human.
Thank you so much for having me, Susan. Glad to be here.
It's nice to see you. I love this piece of furniture behind you. It's beautiful.
I love it too. And it was one of the pieces that was in an estate sale in this house that we purchased back in Arkansas. Some dear friends had the house for sale, and she had a very eclectic sort of a Pacific Rim, Oriental taste. And so, this piece was in her foyer, and we moved it into this nice office here in our house. We were glad to get to keep it and kind of keep the heritage there. My wife's mother she was an antique jewelry person and taught my wife a lot about antiques. My mother-in-law passed away in November of 23, but that was something they really bonded through. But my wife can look at a chair and say, that's firewood, and that chair right beside it has, those claw feet, and that's from this era, and that's worth $950. She can, she's really good at that. But she and her mom shared that, but my mother-in-law was much more into the antique jewelry and stones and that kind of stuff. She sold diamonds out of her kitchen. Had a little kitchen wholesale jewelry group, and she would go to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and buy stones from this jeweler out there. He was really, really good guy. Took care of her, and really sold her some nice pieces. So people did that kind of thing. She was a homemaker, and it's her side hustle, back in the day before.
I love that. Well, let's get into you. Let's talk about where you came up and what inspired the interests of young you into becoming what you do now.
Sure, happy to. I thought in ninth grade that I wanted to be a pediatrician, take care of kids, be a medical doctor, and my path kind of shifted a little bit in college, and encountered an admissions director from the University of Tennessee Health Science Center in Memphis, who he was like, "Yeah, you should think about dental school." And I never really had crossed my mind at that point, and one thing led to another, and that class had one spot remaining in it, and I thought, you know what, I'll go ahead and apply, and was able to get in that class, and change my career trajectory forever. And I tell people all the time, as much difficulty as dental school presented for everybody as we were going through it back then, I would go back again if somebody made me. I just left the office today, had two lovely kiddo patients that I saw toward the end of the day today at the office. And but yeah, so I've been doing dentistry now for 28 years. Went to a little small land grant college in Arkansas, and then on to the University of Tennessee. Arkansas is about to open a dental school. They're going to take their first class in 2025. And insert your toothbrush joke here. Arkansas didn't have not enough teeth to have a dental school. Some people would say back in the day, but we love to let people think that we're barefoot and toothless here in Arkansas. But it's a pretty progressive little southern state with a couple of a president and another presidential candidate. So it's a great place to be. Great business center in Northwest Arkansas. The best art museum between LA and New York. In my opinion. Alice Walton's creation, Crystal Bridges, which is here in Northwest Arkansas, worth the trip.
Alice Walton of Walmart?
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Alice,
okay.
Helen and Sam's daughter, and one of their kids. And she's in her 70s now, but she took 4 years and traveled the world and spent $400 million of her own money putting pieces of art in a beautiful, Frank Lloyd Wright, Fay Jones inspired architectural building in Bentonville, about 2 miles from the Walmart headquarters. It's a lovely campus that just continues to promote art. They had Annie Leibovitz there earlier this year. She did an exhibit. She stayed for 3 weeks. She had elementary school kids come and talk to her, college kids. So they're just promoting the arts and doing a lovely job of it. And they've created a wonderful outdoor venue called the Momentary, where artists like Wilco and Jason Isbell in the 400 unit, are going to play there this year. And it's just a really good place to be. But yeah, so I practiced in Arkansas for the first 22 years of my career. And then a little bit before that time frame in 2014, we started to have FaceTime on a phone. And so I knew that healthcare and dentistry was going to change forever, because, Susan and Blaine, if we're down in Battery Park in New York City, we don't want to go to the Upper East Side of the endodontist and spend half a day going up there to find out, oh gosh, we just need some antibiotic, and we're going to come back 6 weeks later and have a root canal done. And so I knew that, we were going to be communicating like we're talking now. And I kind of saw the writing on the wall there, and I just didn't know how to really ask for funding, and didn't know anything about venture capital or angel investors or anything like that. If I'd asked for $30 million, I'd probably wouldn't be talking to you right now. I'd have my own empire out there, but I didn't know what I was doing. So I asked for about $500,000 to set up a pilot program in Nashville and Phoenix as the first two cities to do a directory, basically, that the centerpiece was, be like Yellow Pages for doctors, but eventually you could have telehealth exams like we're talking now, and do as much as we could do from a telehealth standpoint. So, companies like Invisalign and Smile Direct Club were looking into that in 2014, 2015, and they were trying to figure out a way to start treating patients for orthodontics, short-term orthodontic cases. And I was one of the doctors that they contacted after they got up and rolling. And I was kind of there for the whole ride with Smile Direct Club, from February of 2017, to fall of 2019. They're ringing the bell at the NASDAQ. The company's worth $8.61 billion. They're growing into Ireland, Australia, Canada. Anyway, didn't work out. Ended up closing their doors in December. But through the telehealth world with Smile Direct, I learned a lot about how to treat patients with telehealth, how to develop software that can help do that. And I've kind of lended my expertise to some other companies that are doing some cool stuff with sleep and airway treatment, and helping kids grow their underdeveloped jaws a lot better. And so that's how you and I ended up talking today.
Yeah, I want to get into all of that. I think it's so interesting, the idea of receiving medical care over video.
Yeah,
I can imagine a lot of pros and cons just in general because for people that are nervous, especially about dentists, there's a lot of fear around dentists. And I would imagine that would help calm people down.
sure. Well, if we know as recently as 5 years ago, there was a survey done that showed that more than 1 in 5, it was like 21% of Americans don't go to the dentist at all because of fear. I mean, what a horrible indictment on our profession. Here we are in 2020 and beyond, and people are still afraid to go to the dentist. And so, that's one of the takeaways from our visit today is if somebody's afraid to go to the dentist in 2024, you're going to the wrong spot. I mean, and now can you get in at the other spot? I don't know. It could be challenging, right? But I mean, ask around, talk to your friends, do some research on the internet, read the Google reviews. I've got some bad ones. There's people who have had some bad experiences with some of the stuff we were doing. So, I mean, it's out there, but you shouldn't have, if you're having pain when you go to the dentist or there's a procedure that's scary, there's a better way to do it. I can assure you. And, I mean, we were talking to patients this week about, we have IV nurse anesthetists that can come into our office now. Patient can just have a little IV drip and go to sleep and have a lot of dentistry done and wake up with a new smile, completely comfortable and never have to think about any of the anxiety affiliated with it that we used to have in the past. And so, but it is a deterrent, and so if somebody knows that they're just going to talk to Susan like this, and you can't be poked, prodded, filleted, whatever, through the internet, so, and we did see a lot of that, like with analyzing these telehealth patients in dentistry for, Invisalign, Smile Direct Club, Candid had some direct to consumer stuff going for a while. They're now back in offices only. But many of these patients, you can't believe the dental challenges that they had, and they knew they needed care, but they felt safe. It was a safe environment for them to come and share photographs with somebody. And so we could look at their situation. And many of them, we tried to help direct them to an office that was nearby to them, because they had many, many more concerns than just, doing some cosmetic stuff and moving some teeth around.
There is a lot of shame around teeth. It's really interesting. I mean, there are cultures that outright hide their teeth when they laugh or talk, for sure. But in America and probably the UK, the Western communities, there seems to be a lot of pressure put on having a perfect smile. Actors, once they get a little bit more successful, they go and veneer their face so that they look like they've got neon lights coming out of their mouth. I personally like a little character in teeth.
Sure.
I know my mom, for example, she's really has issues. She's ashamed of her teeth because coffee stains and, over time her teeth started to get crowded and all of this. And she's talking at her age, she's up there, she's talking about getting Invisalign.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, whatever makes you feel better about yourself, go for it. I did Invisalign after doing braces,
Sure.
because your teeth remember where they were. And my dentist at the time, he said, well, I hate to tell you this, but when you grow up, and they pulled a bunch of teeth and all that stuff. So when you grew up, they didn't know as much as they know now. And they actually, the braces messed up your jaw. I used to grind and all that stuff. And he said, let me give you Invisalign, try it out, see what happens. And it changed my life.
Yeah.
I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but I highly recommend that.
Well, just orthodontics in general. I mean, I'm sorry that your experience with bands and brackets and all that wasn't as good as the Invisalign experience, but I've probably sent 1,000 adults over age 25 to the orthodontist, and most people think, okay, well, I'm too old for that,
right?
And I've had a 63-year-old patient have full band and bracketed orthodontics. And she's in her late 80s now, but she's whitened her teeth. Her teeth are easier for her to clean. And as we get older, our dexterity is not as good, right? So we can't floss and brush and get to those tight, crowded areas anymore. So yeah, orthodontics is just one of those things. It's almost like a bigger version of having a manicure or something. It's when you get yourself taken care of and you let somebody take care of you and it goes well, I mean, it feels really good, and it changes people's approach, and they eat better, they function better, they smile better, they're happier with their appearance, and I think, when people are meeting other people or they're communicating, people tend to either notice someone's eyes or someone's smile, the very first thing. And, but to me, the smile comes from in here, right? It's down in your heart. I've seen patients who had all four of their front incisors missing, but they had a great smile because they were such a happy person. And, and so, your smile it doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful, And so, but we can certainly improve that. And there's a lot of nice ways to do it that aren't painful or scary.
Let's talk about sleep and teeth, the connection.
Sure. Happy to. Well, it turns out we're about 4 generations into our jaws are shrinking, and our children, are given a pacifier when they're still in the incubator, and they start, sucking on the pacifier, and it starts to move their cheeks together. When our cheeks are filled with muscles, and the muscles push the teeth together, when our baby molars start to go together, the palate arches. And when the palate arches, the palate is the floor of the airway space, right? So when the palate is arched like this, the palate's narrow and tight. The tongue is not able to fit up where it belongs behind the baby teeth. And we end up with a patient who can't breathe through their nose. And this is a real serious issue. Human beings are obligate nasal breathers. We should be breathing effortlessly, quietly, and visibly through our nose all the time. And it's okay to exhale through your mouth, but when you breathe through your nose, why does it matter if I breathe through my nose? Well, several reasons. Number one, your nose, sits out off of your face. So the air has time as it passes through your nose to warm to temperature to the rest of your body. So you're not breathing in stark cold air like you do right into your mouth, right into the fissures of your tonsils. That maybe that's why we have inflamed tonsils, is because somebody's breathing through their mouth, not because they're allergic to a lot of stuff. So that's all tied in too. But if we're breathing through our nose, the hair in our nose filters the crud out of the air. So we've got air that's warm to temperature. It's filtered to where it's more pure. And now it hits a little sensor back in our parasinuses that causes our body to secrete nitric oxide. And nitric oxide it's the only time it happens in our body physiology. And nitric oxide is the body's own vasodilator, which means that our vasculature opens up. Oxygenated blood is sped to the muscles and the heart and the brain. And so when we get children breathing through their nose with big, wide smiles where their tongue fits up in their palate, these kids thrive, they grow taller, they breathe better, they sleep better, they're ready for school every day, they bounce out of the rack in the morning feeling good and feeling energized, because really what we're talking about is restorative sleep. And when we can't breathe through our nose properly, we can't get restorative sleep. And it's a national epidemic that nobody really talks about. It's why we're talking today. I'm trying to get it to as many ears as we can.
I've read a lot recently about mouth tape for adults to facilitate that very thing, to get them to breathe through their nose because that's the snoring and the apnea and all that when your head tilts back and your mouth opens.
Yeah. So what are some simple things that we can do tonight? If you're listening to the podcast and you're driving somewhere and listening to it, I like side sleeping. If you're sleeping on your back, we're just working against gravity, right? Because your mandible is going to fall open sometimes. And that's where the mouth taping comes in. We prescribe mouth tape on a weekly basis. We'll have somebody we recommend it to. If you're going to use mouth tape, there's there's several different varieties that work well. I recommend taping vertically so that you've got a little bit of air passage around the side if you need it. But basically, we want the lips together, teeth apart, breathing through the nose is what we're trying to achieve. And mouth tape actually works. And in fact, I think there was one of the U.S. Open run-up tennis tournaments, I think, earlier in the summer. There was a ladies player that got a lot of publicity because she mouth taped during a match. She was having trouble breathing through her mouth, and so she covered her mouth so she could breathe through her nose during the match. And so people were like, "What's she doing?" And nobody understood it. But yeah, it can help you, and it can help you perform better because you're getting more oxygenated blood to your muscles. And it can even help with things like cramps, in the middle of a match, if you're breathing better through your nose.
What are your thoughts about pacifiers then? Are they doing us a disservice?
Well, I mean, there are many orthodontic companies now that are trying to make better pacifiers. But when a child gets to age 2, and they've got all their baby teeth in, I like to switch the woobie for something called a tooth pillow, which is broader, flatter. It keeps the musculature off of the developing dental alveolus, the bone around the teeth, and it helps widen a patient's jaws so that their tongue, which is the body's own natural expander, can fit up in the palate like it's supposed to. There's 4 or 5 companies out there that make these kinds of appliances. Healthy Start is one of the companies in Chicago. MyoBrace, which is an Australian company, and they make one of the finest devices for young children who have an underbite. If we start kiddos that have an underbite with an I3N, like Nancy, appliance from MyoBrace, we can actually keep these kids from having an underbite. It will gradually jump that crossbite if they're compliant to wear the appliance. And then that can save kids a $40,000 jaw surgery, when they're in high school or college. So it's really important. So, and then we have Tooth Pillow, which is online right now. You can go be my patient. If you're a mom out there, you can go and send in some photographs and answer a little survey question, and you can have a tooth pillow shipped out to you this week. Tooth pillow appliances are made by a company called Vivos, which has just got FDA approval on an adult expansion appliance for sleep. That's a removable appliance back in, I think, January. But they make these wonderful little appliances that are, to me, they have just the right amount of flex to them and also toughness so that kids they have a hard time tearing them up. Really intuitive. You can hand a 2-year-old this device and they'll just put it in their mouth. I don't even have to insert it for them. And sometimes they'll put it upside down, but most of the time they just look at it and go, oh, okay. I mean, because that's what every 2 or 3-year-old does anyway. I mean, you hand them something, they put it in their mouth typically. So it's pretty intuitive. About 90% of the kids learn to wear it really well, but it helps them sleep properly and breathe through their nose and keeps the muscles of their cheeks, even if, and it also prevents them really from getting, their thumb or index finger or something in their mouth, to suck on it and create that palatal arching that we don't want.
I read that teeth clenching and teeth grinding is a genetic thing that can be triggered by an event, but that if you're either going to react that way or not based on your genetics, is there truth to that?
There is some truth to that, because, we clench when we're in pain or having anxiety, but almost always in children or adults, clenching the teeth together. In other words, burying those bumps of enamel into the peaks into the valleys on the opposing arch. Our teeth are only designed to touch one another about 2 minutes total out of a 24-hour day, and that's when we swallow. That's the only time that our teeth should be together. And so, and that, which we know is just not true. We got all these stressed out drivers out there. We got people, clenching their jaw muscles. We watch the major league hitters when they're in the batter's box, and boy, they're clenching those teeth together. We want to have, the teeth ideally not touching, because when we're chewing, there's food between our teeth. When we're talking, our teeth are not together. So, but yeah, that's a key factor for sure.
I bet you everybody listening to this right now just went, okay, where are my teeth?
Yeah.
My natural state, my teeth are apart, and I feel like my tongue is up into the roof of my mouth.
Well, that's golden. That's how we want it.
But that's not how it was before. As an adult, again, I was clenching like crazy, and now I don't do that anymore because I got everything is aligned the way it's supposed to do. I don't think most of us don't really think about how important that alignment is with everything else going on in our bodies.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I wasn't taught about it in dental school. I mean, I was taught, okay, people have crooked teeth, refer them to the orthodontist. And, that's what we need to know about that, general dentist out there. But just about, I mean, I've got 2 or 3 colleagues that, I really trust and work with often. And they always talk about how any kind of grinding or clenching of the teeth is a sign of a patient that's trying to breathe. They're trying to breathe through their nose. And if a patient is, if they have what we call a deep bite, where their upper teeth are way down when they're closed together, covering their incisors, your overbite should only be about 1 to 2 millimeters. Okay. And so if a patient is deep, then they're at some point to open their airway, their brain is going to send a signal. Okay, let's move those lower teeth downward and forward against the backs of the upper teeth so that we can get the airway open. We can breathe through the nose, but we still have the teeth touching. And so what many patients will do is they'll do what we call a protrusive clenching, where they'll slide their mandible forward until their lower teeth come apart, on the backs of their upper front teeth. And there's a very common wear pattern that we see, especially like if folks have like porcelain crowns or veneers on their upper teeth. Porcelain's harder than tooth enamel, so we'll look at their lower teeth and they'll have 1 to 2 millimeters worn off of their lower incisors because they're wearing on that porcelain all the time on the upper arch. So it's really common.
Do you actually have parents coming in and saying, my kid's not sleeping and we need you? Or is that an after effect where you say, hey, I noticed their teeth are doing this certain thing. Are your kids sleeping? And then reverse engineer?
It's definitely the latter. They don't. It's again, that's why we're on this crusade to try to tell as many people as we can, whether it's through a podcast or a radio show or write a book or get on a morning local news somewhere and get the story out there. Because people just don't understand that if their child is snoring, that's a bad thing. One of the Friends characters, I can't remember which one, there was a snoring episode. We've got, the 7 dwarves snoring, and we make fun of it. And really, when somebody's snoring and snoring loudly, it means they're struggling to breathe. So it's definitely the latter of those two things that you said. Usually it's me trying to point out to the family, or like I'll have parents say, oh no, my kid sleeps really well because I can't wake him up in the morning. Well, that's a problem, because that means they may have been awake all night, tossing and turning, and now they finally got into a deep sleep right before it's time to get up and go to school. The other thing that's very common is moms will say to me, oh, look, little Timmy's got perfectly straight baby teeth. Well, that means crowding is on the way, because the baby teeth are so tiny that we need space in between all the baby teeth. So perfect primary or baby tooth dentition has space about the width of a dime, a US 10-cent coin, in between all the teeth. So when these parents come in and they go, oh, look, we're so glad little Tommy's teeth are straight. It's like, oh, he needs expansion, right now, because we got these anatomically large adult teeth that are going to be coming in, and we want to have plenty of room for them. We want to get the foundation set up, so that those teeth can come in.
It was my understanding when I was younger that your baby teeth fell out and then your adult teeth grow in. And then I saw a photograph of a skull of a child, and they had their baby teeth, and then up above it were all these other teeth. And then I thought, am I being pranked? Is that a real person? Is that real?
Yeah, it absolutely is real. And I could show you thousands of x-rays, that just show those. And it's so strange too, because the baby teeth roots, they're really spread apart, like on the molars, because the bulb of that, what we call the crown of the tooth, is developing, inside, in the confines of that baby tooth root. And it's really fascinating. But when you look at an x-ray, just like, wow, where are we going to put all these teeth? Because there's a full set of baby teeth. And then there are patients that even have extra adult teeth.
My brother, they called him shark teeth. He had 2 sets of adult teeth. They had to pull all those adult teeth out, the second set.
Yeah.
And he had braces almost 7 years, poor thing.
Oh, wow. Supposedly Freddie Mercury was similar. He had lots of extra teeth.
His teeth were huge. I have giant teeth also. I had a bunch pulled out.
Yeah, and it happens. I mean, I haven't seen anybody with that many extras, but I've seen many, many patients with 1 or 2 extra teeth that were, like wisdom teeth. I've seen patients with 5 wisdom teeth. And
oh, wow.
And I had a friend of mine whose son had 2 perfect lateral incisors on this side. He had one on the other side too, but it had 2. I mean, I was like, which one do you want removed? Because we need to get rid of one of these, so.
My friend Jill, she was born without wisdom teeth. They weren't there.
Yeah, I'd say about 20% of the population is born without them.
I guess that's evolution, right? Because we don't need them. They keep getting pulled out, maybe.
Yeah, I think it is, because like if there's a popular book in our circles that's written by an anthropologist named Robert Corricini, and he went back and studied skulls like in Africa, going several hundred years back. And the early skulls had 32 teeth, big, broad arches. And part of that is that it turns out that breastfeeding is important, because when a child breastfeeds, it's actually more of a biting motion or chewing motion than it is a suckling motion. So it helps their jaws, their gum tissue get tougher and their jaws open up more and get wider. And so we don't see as much sleep apnea or sleep disordered breathing in sub-Saharan Africa because of food insecurity and other things. They breastfeed the children there almost up until age 5. And so see a lot better growth and development there than we do in the US. And you probably remember too, when we were kids, there might have been one other kid on our block that got braces. Well, now it's, everybody, so it's like there's so much crowding now compared. Plus we're seeing like jaws so small that a 14-year-old child will have really well-developed wisdom teeth that almost traps their 12-year molars from erupting, because their jaws are so small and the teeth are developing earlier. And then we end up with, some pretty severe crowding.
You wrote a book, What Happens When Your Child Doesn't Sleep.
We did. Yeah.
Let's get into that a little bit.
I wish it was out yet. I mean, it was supposed to be out November 30th. This is publishing for you, right? In 2024. Here we are, still waiting on the final edits to be done. But yeah, we did write a book. Brian Ferry and myself. Brian tragically lost a loved one to sleep apnea. His wife, about 9 years ago, passed away with 2 sleep apnea machines in the plastic underneath her bed. Never could get a tolerated CPAP machine, which is the story of most U.S. adults. Only 4 in 10 people can tolerate wearing a CPAP machine. And really all it does is treat the symptom. It helps you get air through your nose, so your mouth can close and you can breathe and you can rest. And it does work, but it's treating the symptom, and the greater problem, or the root cause of the problem, is narrow jaws. And so, we're developing new ways to treat that all the time. But yeah, we wanted to write the book so that, we can address some of these issues that kids have, because and it's not really about lack of oxygen to the brain. Your brain can survive a surprisingly long time with diminished oxygen. It's really about the sleep and being able to breathe through their nose well enough to get restorative sleep, so they feel good, they're able to concentrate. And so we see things improving, like bedwetting goes away when we can breathe through our nose properly. If I give 10 kids that are bedwetting, 10 7-year-olds that are bedwetting, if I put one of these appliances in their mouth, 7 of them will stop bedwetting tonight. I mean, it's really dramatic, the connection between proper nasal breathing and, systemic pathophysiology.
Talking about that, sleep apnea, this tragic way to pass away. And I know it's not like it's every day, but it's also not that uncommon. I read about that as well, that apnea claims otherwise seemingly healthy people. And I think people have this connotation, if you're morbidly obese, then you'll have sleep apnea, but you can be incredibly fit and have sleep apnea.
100%.
And it's such an interesting idea to think, okay, maybe that's why I didn't get a good night's sleep last night, is because my mouth was open during the night instead of closed. But this might gross out some people, but some mornings when I wake up and my lips are actually sealed shut from saliva or whatever. Mm-hmm. And on those mornings when I wake up like that, when my lips won't open until I physically do that, I have the best sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we can all tell, when we get really good restorative sleep, it feels great. You wake up with a new lease on life that morning. You're thinking, okay, this is awesome. And imagine if you were 6 years old and you hadn't had a good night's sleep in forever. I mean, and we have little kids every day that we're waking up in the morning. We're trying to get them to wake up and feed them and get them to school and help them thrive in an environment where, they're falling asleep all day, or they're unable to focus because they haven't had adequate rest.
Or teenagers who all they want to do is sleep.
Or they're want to sleep during the daytime because they're almost nocturnal. They're looking at a screen late at night, or they're playing a video game or something. So yeah, it's just so important. And so that's why we wrote the book, is to try to help people be aware of what some of these signs and symptoms are, and what are some of the things that we can help, by getting some expansion in the jaws and creating bigger smiles, so we get better breathing through the nose and better sleep.
And how does apnea kill people?
Well, many times, what's the number one killer in the United States?
Now fentanyl, but then maybe heart attack.
Heart attack is still number one.
Is it
So but when do most heart attacks happen?
at night?
At night. And so what's really happening is someone's having respiratory arrest and then their heart fails. And so that's what's so significant about my buddy Brian's wife, is that it's very rare for a coroner to say that someone died of complications of sleep apnea, because usually it's a heart issue, or it's a oxygen saturation problem. It's respiratory arrest. Which is that's very closely tied to sleep apnea. But what happens is, it's actually how we measure it in a sleep study. When we see somebody who says, it's one of the questions that we ask our patients when they come in for checkups in the dental office. How do you sleep? And they go, well, why do you care? So the first thing they say, and it's like, well, because we can help sometimes if we know some. And I'll ask patients, when's the last time you woke up and felt really rested? And they'll say, I can't remember. And so we start to look, and they have all these signs and symptoms of apnea. First of all, many of them have insurance, so we want to try the CPAP pathway first. Many of them want to do that because they have insurance that'll pay for it. So we start there, and hopefully they're able to tolerate it. And if they're not, then we look into, and that's another misnomer that's out there. Medical insurance, once a patient has tried a CPAP machine, will pay for a dental appliance. If you say, I don't like this thing, it makes me feel claustrophobic, I can't tolerate it, it doesn't work, then your doctor can sign a letter saying, I'd like for them to have an oral appliance made. And that's part of the reason that there's such a lack of knowledge about this, is because we have the doctors who aren't trained anything about, much at all about the oral complications of it. And we have dentists who don't know really much about sleep testing or sleep studies in a hospital. And so you got these two, it's like going to the podiatrist and asking them about a root canal, and they won't know anything about it. It's the same principle. That's a big part of the information exchange that we're trying to work through and get everybody together on the same page.
Are you doing outreach to communities that do have a lack of insurance to try and get them help as well? Or is that the next step?
Well, we're trying to get information out to anyone that can benefit from it, and a lot of times it's not through the medical community, it's through chiropractors and massage therapists and PTA chair people, at the school, who've seen these, so many kids getting referred for stimulant treatment, and medications that, because in 2024, I would want my 7 or 8 year old child, I would want to try everything before, we put them on some sort of big pharma stimulant, and not that there aren't kids who can definitely benefit from that, because I've seen those kids too, that they've had a benefit from it, and they've been able to use it for a while. And then their doctors were wise enough to wean them off of it as they got older, and they're doing fine now. But, it's pretty rare to see that those drugs have a long-term positive impact.
I think, again, I don't have children, so I can't speak to this, but I think that for adults, there's so many devices out there now that track your sleep and your oxygenation levels and your deep sleep and your REM sleep and all this stuff. And as somebody that has one of those devices, I am shocked at what I didn't know about when I was sleeping, what I assumed just because I closed my eyes at midnight and woke up at 8, that I somehow got a good night's sleep, even though I would be not functioning great the next day. To see the difference and say, oh my God, an actual good night's sleep where I'm getting deep sleep and REM sleep and all of that, it's night and day, no pun intended. It's wild how different you feel. So I imagine for a little kid who's growing and the body's already using up so much energy to do so many other things, how much that would affect them.
Oh yeah. Well, and of course they even, depending on their age, need more sleep, than an adult does. So yeah, it's a huge factor for sure.
Yeah. So interesting. Tell people how they might find you or reach out to you and learn more about this.
Sure. I'm licensed in 12 states. So many of the folks that are listening can be a patient of mine if they want to be. If you're interested in tooth pillow for a child aged 2 to 12, 13, 14, you can go to toothpillow.com. I'm licensed in California and Arkansas and Tennessee and New York and New Jersey and Michigan and Florida. So, you can connect with me that way through the toothpillow.com website, or you can come directly to my website, which is drblaineleeds.com. And, and you can find our phone number there, call my staff. We can treat you with telehealth and start directly from our office. Or you can go to askdrleeds.com, which is where you can find out more information about the book and pre-order the book.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Leeds. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, it's good to talk with you, Susan. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we'll get some sleep out there for people, and at the very least, help their jaws align in the right way. I'm telling you what changed my life. I will attest to the fact that me thinking I had straight teeth and realizing that it was more of a jaw problem, and just how the Invisalign changed everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.
Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks. Bye.